I think you don't need introducing because everyone found out who you were yesterday. We're very happy to have you here. This is very exciting for us. This is a class in leadership, and I just wanted to say that, in keeping with the ideas that were espoused yesterday, I think the goal is to have everyone in the group be a leader in some sense. Ms. Fauci may, or at least I want to allow for the possibility that she may want to address various individuals in the course of this class, and since it's too much to expect that she would learn everybody's names under the circumstances, she may resort to addressing you in an impersonal manner.
You in the blue shirt.
Right, and so we're giving her permission to do that, and we're looking forward to this very much, so go ahead.
I was wondering if we could start with just maybe doing the exposition of the first movement of the Haydn. And I was having some thoughts this morning as I was warming up and thinking about the rehearsal yesterday and what I was observing, and wondering if we could start with the premise, and also having seen the core, that when we're gesturing, one of the things that I remember from when I was studying with Robert Mann was he always liked to talk about when you're playing to think about the audience member in the back row and what you're communicating, that you have to be expressive enough to be making some gesture that's understandable to the very furthest away seat. And what I think about when I'm sitting in the first seat of orchestra is that I'm communicating a big enough gesture, whatever it is, whether it's in its smallness or bigness or clarity, that reaches to the back of the orchestra, whether it's the last stand, the bass is on the opposite side, the timpani who's all the way over here. So I think that the gestures, if you think of it as like a soloistic thing, that your movements are a lot bigger, whoever's in the front. And then the delicacy is that you have to make gestures that are very clear, but you can't be at the forefront. You can't anticipate where the actual entrance is going to be, because I've found that sometimes I get over enthusiastic about a big gesture and I come in, I'm way ahead of everybody else. So it's sort of a fine-tuned thing between making a large gesture and then when you're actually playing, sort of anticipating that there's going to be a little lag and fitting into where the group sound behind you is coming forward. So it's a really fine balancing act, but I thought if we just tried doing that, and then I might actually have us rotate seats a little bit too, so everyone gets a feeling of what it feels like in the front and the back, following and leading, if that's okay. So if we don't mind, starting at the beginning, maybe going to the end of that first repeat sign in the Allegro. Why don't we try the very beginning, since there's that slow and fast. And so for the first time, I might just watch. And I wanted to have you guys all feel free to sort of catalog comments or questions or criticisms that you might have, and feel free later as we're working to raise your hands if there's something you're noticing that you wanted to politely bring to their attention. So that was a really good first time through. I noticed there's a pretty good sense of section to section, but I could use a lot more. One comment is communication between the first stands, that you guys are really leading, to sort of that you're really bonded, and then that you're communicating back. Sometimes I see you look at each other, and a lot of times I don't. And I think that both as an audience member and because you're going to be magnifying across all section leaders, that just relying on your peripheral vision is a little dangerous. That if you really can, turn your head and then eventually also consider wind positions and things like that too. To actually make eye contact is a really big thing. And then also in the chords and things, a really much bigger gesture. Whenever you had a bunch of chords at the beginning of measures, I felt like everyone was sort of doing their own counting in their head as opposed to looking forward and trying to lock into the front, who would then be locked into each other. And then the very first chord is another really big thing. If we could try that a few times, maybe. I'd love to have a little more feeling of intent of what the tempo is going to be. I see the cue, but I don't have a sense of the adagio as a whole being in this big one. I'd love to, maybe if you would even consider giving it 2, 3, ba, ba, because it's very hard just from this to sense the gravity of the beginning, and given that you have to communicate to 30 people. That's better. Can we try one more time? Is it a forte or it's a fortissimo, and it seems a little lightweight. Maybe even the pickup 16th could have more depth and weight. I would say right now the bow, where you are in the bow, is not all unified. And I see you looking at each other, but you're not quite waiting for the beats to come. I see a little anticipation all around, like you're all breathing and you're not all agreeing where the bottom of your cue is. So it's, and you're also in the chords, you're anticipating your own cue a little bit. So try giving it big, but laying back just a little bit. That was much better. Do you have any comments, helpful comments from?
The 2 staccato notes, beats 1 and 2, I don't know the note values, but the and the low dynamic level. Yeah. I think that you should decide on a character for those. It's my impression sitting out there. That it's quiet and it's staccato, which is what Haydn said, but it seems limp to me, and I'm wondering if there could be some really vivid projection of character.
Do you want to discuss what that might be, or how? Any suggestions from the listening gallery?
I say when in doubt, start with humor. That's just me.
Because the first section is adagio, I think it's more serious than the second section. So
I would say in general, the whole adagio section seems a little not characterful yet. It seems a little bit fast to be really, is it mournful or is it tender or is it thoughtful? But it's neither, it's a little bit lively feeling to have a real mood that's set right now. And bar to bar, it seems a little in disagreement about. So maybe you guys could think of a whole atmosphere you're trying to create for the beginning and then try to fit your strokes and the tempo into that.
I think the fortissimos need to be dramatic, and the fortes dramatic, big contrast to the piano sections.
We could feel like in the second and third bars that we don't exactly know where it's going to go until when we have bar 5, that's when things actually start. It feels very tentative right now rather than feeling like we're trying to figure out where it's going to go. I mean, after we have the big chord, all of a sudden, boom, boom, it seems kind of strange that we're going into that. So it kind of made me play around with the fact that it's different than we're expecting also.
So tentative and questioning in the beginning piano, and then more drama in the chords. And then right after that, I guess, I would say if you could really, in your, really think about it not being the same as the allegro, it's and more different, more in the vein of maybe the uncertain or questioning or introductory material.
Were you saying it sounds tentative now, or it should be?
It sounds and feels tentative. It feels like all of us aren't quite sure where everyone else is going to play. I don't know, that's what I feel like sitting here.
Right.
Yeah, we weren't
Maybe you
together.
could not go for that type of tentative. That's what
Yeah.
I'm starting to say.
Questioning but not tentative.
Right.
I like that word thoughtful because it, to me, it doesn't sound heavy or serious, but more considering type of thing. That's
Okay.
weird.
I like the stroking the piano.
The beginning chord is like the curtain opening, and then after that, it's kind of maybe like an opera, like singing, and then like when the allegro starts, it's like you start acting, like then there's action, then things start moving. So I think this is like an introduction, the setting of a story, whatever the story may be. We can decide that as a group, maybe as we play, but the adagio is like the setting. This is the mood setter of the story. So whatever story this is.
You want to try that one more time and go into the allegro?
Sure.
And then I might actually have you try the same thing again, just flipping the sections just flipping the stands around.
I was thinking two things. I was thinking the first chord would be longer, and
Okay.
fortissimo longer before we. I was trying to show that, and I felt like things kind of doing it a bit too quickly.
Do you want some space before that first note, or you want it all more connected?
Either way, I was playing with a little space, but I mean the first chord.
It's
longer.
separate.
And then I was thinking that these are like trajectorials, so we could be emphasis on the downbeats. Down.
speaker? That's much better. I would love to try just now flipping the first, second stands and the third, fourth stands, and you guys also, if you could just change seats for once and try the same thing again. Do you guys have anything you'd like them to try differently? Yes?
There's like a ornamentation and it's more of like a drill or a term. The very first one, the first are never quite exact how they want to play that.
I have a question. My score, I have it as a slur. You're playing 4 notes separate? Is this the da-ga-da-ga-da, that repeating figure? Oh, that one. Do you mean that one or the allegro figure?
No, at 7?
Yeah. It's the same.
Oh, that one.
But this one wasn't together.
Actually, my question was
And then over
here. These ones. Oh, you have them written in separate. That's a bowing. Is that a bowing decision? Oh, okay. I guess I'd be curious also to try it at some point. Da 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 da. Down, up. Just to see if it would flow a little bit more fleetly, but that's not the right. And then you could do an up. I'd just be curious to hear it once to see if it had a little more grace. At least it works also. It just makes it a little bit more motoric, you know. But let's hear that anyways. So yeah, concentrate on the turn being together, and why don't you just play that same amount again? And oh, can I just say when you go to that whole repeated section, 37 and on from there, that there needs to be some group consciousness because there's a little bit of rushing going on that somehow you're locking into the person next to you, the person you hear behind you, so that you're locked in tighter, whether you're all rushing together. Right now you're not quite in time together, nor are you rushing together, but whatever it is, that you do it together. I wanted you guys to listen to that figuration with the da-ga-da-ga-da all separate. Can you right now try it once from bar 36, slurring the da-da-da-da-da, and then doing up bows? Yeah. All the way to where we just stopped. And tell me if you guys like one or the other better. The ensemble was much better that time, though. I think you're starting to lock into each other better. Actually, maybe should we go from 32 just to get into it a little bit? the second violin's not 4-note slur, 2 notes. And right now, the notes right after it are rushing a little bit. So, and also, I think you can go ahead and bar. I can't sing. 48, doing the da 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 on a down bow. I like. Yeah. So the downbeat is up, and then digging in at the frog. Da 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 da. It gives a little more punch too.
I was thinking of doing the last beat up. Or is that?
Oh, no, then the next. I like the whole thing under the slur, not because I think you'll hear the bow change, and then up, up. Can you do that same thing one more time? What do you guys think? Can you give a reason for? I mean, I'm trying to articulate in my own head.
Maybe because you guys all are doing the same kind of bow stroke now. It looks like bow placement's more like equal around the section.
Would you like to hear the other way now and see if you guys can do the same bow placement? I mean, because it shouldn't just be it's partly what sounds better, but also musically they sound pretty different in terms of the energy in the bar. So, I mean, do you guys have a clear preference for one or the other?
I like the downs.
The slur.
Yeah,
definitely. I feel like it opens up our bow as like we can play the line a little more rather than having to stay kind of in the same spot in the bow for everything.
It swings more too, I think.
Emphasizes the notes in the down more.
Are you okay with Nick?
Sure.
Okay. Can we go on from there, maybe rotate again somehow, however you like?
I just wanted to make one
Sure.
forward question. Would you be willing to sit faster with them?
It's too much pressure. Oh, sure.
Because that would be very instructive for us.
Okay, well, I'll do that in the next, okay. Sure, yeah, I'm kidding. Do you want to do the top again? Just, I guess, as we're coming together now, why don't we do from the top then? I think partly it's just doing it over and over again, but you guys are really locking in and following. And it's very fascinating to see how things change with whoever the leader is. Little nuances come out. I think just the body language, you guys are reacting differently to different types of cues, and it is interesting to see. It's not one is better than the other, it's just always different. And I always notice that with our group also, that who's sitting in the front positions in the same piece can really change how a piece it goes in really subtle ways. Do you guys have any?
But I still think that fortissimo chord at the beginning is in Haydn stated, fortissimo is a pretty extremist marking, and it doesn't convince me. It's too polite somehow.
Is there a way of getting even a little grit in there, the bop, bop, you know, a little bit more?
What if we have a little more space, bong, bong, you know, like, and that might make it sound more dramatic at the same time?
Also, just making sure we temper things correctly. The first chord is fortissimo, and then the two chords in measure four are only forte. So those are, right now it's coming out as a lot louder.
That's true.
Should we shape those chords in measure 4 a little bit? I mean, do we like tom, tom, or do we want wom, tom, or something else?
Well, it seems like Nick was saying, that still feels like an impression figure,
Yeah, so still strong.
or weaker.
Well, correct.
Right. And in the same, like Nick was saying, if we can hold up the fortissimo longer, I mean, I feel like we're dropping dynamic really, really soon. Still much
And it's
more
also-
here than movement.
It doesn't feel just more than 3 beats right now. 15
Yeah.
RCs, what we're
Yeah.
going to do that, or is that what we want? Do we want
Do you feel like we're breaking?
Maybe
Are we
a
dividing
tiny bit
this
louder
up?
first and
Or
then
trying
go
to-
back to
yeah.
Okay.
That's true. I mean, if we do roll them more, they won't be as heavy. Is that what you meant in bar 4?
Does everyone have a rolled chord? Maybe we should check the score.
Does it have a little? Right. It could just sound good.
With only the violins have triple stops, everyone else will be playing single notes. It might be a little, lessen the impact a little bit if they're too rounded.
I mean, going back to the positore thing, I think it would be a good idea if, yes, bar 3 and 4 were positores, bar 5 is not, if that's the arrival. Dum, bum, 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 yum, bum. I mean, that's the arrival. So, I mean, if we could just do another positore, there's like no
No.
difference.
Do you want to try it that way?
So to be
Maybe
Maybe equal?
Let's try just
or
one more
equal,
space.
yeah.
With that in mind, do you want a little bit of time for that bump, bump, like play songs, or do you want to go through bump, bump into it?
See what happens.
Okay.
Can we just go to the end of the adagio and then
Yeah.
stop? And actually, the other thing, right at bar 4, it seems like it gets pretty moving, and then especially then when you guys take over the mortar and the second violins, bar 8, it seems like it loses the sort of searching, thoughtful character. It's motoring on a little bit. Maybe we could try with it, really taking the edge off the tempo and letting it just sit. Don't worry about direction so much. And I'd be curious. It might just die on the vine, but I'd be curious to see if the whole thing's just completely placid to the allegro. Comments? Yes.
I think just not to be nitpicky, but the second note you guys played, actually, the C and E third, could you just address the tuning really quickly? That would be fantastic.
Can you say that again? Where?
It's
It's the second
Bar
part.
2.
That might be a vibrato issue.
Yeah, that's true. In general, the C is a little higher.
Yeah, I think it might be a little
If we think of just the C being a little bit lower, because that is the tonic, and not too much vibrato.
Do you want to play those 2 notes really quick?
So just random 1, 2? Doesn't it feel like the C is just a little bit high? Yeah. Compared to our E? Because our E is going to ring the one. Can we just try the C slightly lower? You see?
Too low.
That feels better.
I feel like it's maybe unhelpful for 4 people to be adjusting at once. Can we try with 1 person?
And add everyone.
We're just still slightly higher on fall.
And the key then would be when in context to not vibrate too much, to kind of keep it warm but contained.
Yeah.
You know.
We're also playing with bassoons here, so it might just be a hopeless case.
Well, it's helpful if you guys are in tune internally. And there's another comment?
No, that was the same one. It was a two-hand.
Oh. For me, the whole thing was more atmospheric. I thought that was beautiful. The chords in bar 2, 3, 4 are still not really quite together. I think it's a hard thing also to cue, but they seem like they come just a hair early. They're just not monolithic enough. They should
I
just
think
be
like you
full.
were talking about, I feel like I'm beating myself.
But it's not always quite that. Even that everyone else is a little. Maybe if we all cue together and you're just really. And I like that. I mean, it's not quite in time, but it shouldn't be early. That if everyone really just breathes together, maybe. Can you try the first 5 bars? And when you get to that point, just everybody together make the gesture.
Did the fortissimo seem more dramatic? Yeah?
It's heading in the right direction.
Quick, it seems to me that some of us are dividing those chords and some of us maybe are not. So maybe we should try one more than the other or something.
You want to try 2 and 2, or do you want to just try?
Do you want to try both?
No.
And you're just fine.
Oh, it was fine.
Oh, okay. What do you think, Bonnie? Would you rather roll them, or play all of them, or do just?
I guess I would rather play them.
Yeah, if you look at the score, everyone else has single notes, not a lot of chord numbers. So if we divide, it seems like wapa.
Yeah.
No, but if we divide.
If we don't, we roll, yeah.
Right, yeah, I think rolling is.
Well, let's try 2 and 2 then.
But do you think it's worth doing that and dumping in the middle note, or should we just have like the top and the bottom 2, so all the voices are equal?
Well, we can voice them ourselves.
Okay. Wait, you do or don't?
I do think so.
Okay, so 2 and 2.
It's much better. The second chord is not exactly together, but the first chord was much closer.
I liked the dividing that felt better.
And this is a teeny thing, but it seems that bars 2 and 3 shouldn't be exactly the same. They're coming down in register, right? So they're a little bit less energy. It seems equal or a little bit like a renewed thing. That it's just fading. And then you shock with the big chords. But actually, this seems like it's heading in the right direction. Maybe we should move to something else just for contrast. Do you want to shuffle again, maybe inside, outside? Or actually, Nick, why don't we go back to our initial seating first? You want to do some second movement? Can you think of any other issues that addressing, other than just kind of playing through things by example? Oh, you want me to?
Again.
Yeah, no, maybe, I'll think of that.
One thing that occurred to me with the 2 little notes that we're out of tune, is that the second violin seemed very unanimous in deciding to play that in third position on the D string. Sometimes in a situation like that, you'll get more homogeneity if you play it on the A string. In this case, because the first fiddles are also on the A, it's a little bit clearer kind of sound too. And that C, because the E doesn't have much room for, it's kind of got to be about where open E is. You'd be surprised how high that C has to be in order not to sound flat, or in order for the E not to sound sharp.
Yeah, the color match would be better if you stayed here. Do you want to, why don't we play the first thing with the repeats just to get a couple? Yes. Maybe just to the first variation. From the very beginning, why don't you guys really lock in on all the little fast-moving notes are a little skittish all around and not locked in. So maybe just try right from the beginning. Can we go from the beginning to 17 ones without repeat and just try to clean it up, really lock in parts of the bow and timing of the running notes. Maybe without the seconds first.
Fourth measure, how are we doing that?
And then what about 11?
That's just an ornament before.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and Nick, is bar 4 slurred in the 2/8 notes after all, or?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. Just first. Why don't we try that right away again? It's getting better. There's still little things that are, I feel like you guys, your heads are still in your parts and not quite up with Nick right now. And Nick, if you can try to show a little bit more what you're doing, because there's nice contrast between some of the phrases you're clipping the slurs and some of them you're playing longer, and you guys are kind of following but not all the way yet. So maybe if you can try to be a little more demonstrative, and if you guys can have one eye up. Try adding the seconds, unless there's any comments from the gallery.
That part you guys just played, I feel like the dynamics, it feels a little loud, and it feels like you're getting too loud for this, like the style of this movement. And I think the forzatos will speak for the contrast and the texture. So, and I guess if you guys could like not get as loud when you're going up. I mean, still get loud as the phrase goes up, but not as loud, because it feels a little out of character for the second movement being so soft and kind of lofty.
I also think in relation to the problems with getting everything together, one of the places that it was least together was when you had longer notes. I don't have a score, so I guess it's a quarter note, and then 16th notes, so you have bum, bum, da 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 da. People were coming in early, not holding the quarter long enough.
Yeah, the biggest one, when the sequence bars 6 and 7, the second half of 7 coming out into the cadence, that last one is the sloppiest of the 3 in a row. So.
Could some of that ensemble problem be solved just by, breathing together and, between these, small parts of phrases, just taking as many chances as possible to reconnect with everyone around you. It's like it's broken up in a really easy way for you guys to find time to be together.
Yeah, that was kind of the same as that. You guys are starting together, the phrases, but you guys aren't really ending together. That's what I was just kind of noticing. Like you guys are making the motions to the beginning of the phrase, but not really. You guys are just kind of stopping, and nothing's happening at the end of them. So maybe if you guys like connecting beginning and end.
The same thing
One of the issues here with the 6 and 7 is we're all holding the 8th notes. How do you want that? Do you want space?
In 7?
In 7, yeah.
Yeah, I was playing
Yeah. I think that's really going to help unify getting us to all space before the phrase.
Yeah, that's fine.
much better. And I feel, and it's true that it'd be nice to think of actually the second violins and eventually the cellos leading the timings. Right now there's a little bit of driving from the melody, and ultimately it'd be nice if you guys just rested on a subterranean pulse that was going on. There's a little bit of, especially like the very first bar and the very first bar after the repeat. Dun, da, dum, ba. There's a little anxiety in those two duples, teeniest bit, so sit tight. I'd love to go on to the next one because it needs a lot more fire coming out of, if you guys can, as you were saying, have the beginning be pretty kind of quiet and internal. And I would suggest, because the double stop, triple stops, just doing those down, down, down in the seconds maybe, more fire. And then given the drama, I think that the stroke, the first they're using a da, 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 seems very lightweight. I would suggest maybe even like a portato dashes under the slur or something to give it more serioso quality, if you want to try that anyways. Also, I don't hear the first piano in bar 18. The second 16th note is swallowed entirely, so maybe even a little teeny bit of delay or something, if you can lock in.
Could we do the bar before the key change so that we can get into it?
You can do the repeat.
So the bar before?
Repeat after I do it again. I still feel like the pickup is lacking in drama. I don't think it should come delayed though. Maybe if you're coming from the bar before, da, dum, ba, ba, right away, shocking, but really strong. And your gesture, I think Nick in bar 20 for this right after the 8th rest. Also, you just need to really show that this is another forte, strong entrance. It's not visually kind of gripping yet. Sorry. The other thing is now the chords have more drama, but the interludes seem the characters not defined. They look a little desultory, like they're a little easy piano. Is it scary? Is it shivering? Or is it actually the drama's gone and it's kind of back in comfort zone? It's not defined right now.
Feels like it should be sneaky, sort of. Like, so there's still energy in it, but it's boom, 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 boom. I don't know. That's what I think.
Maybe like Eye of the Storm kind of thing.
Yeah. Something.
I think it's still agitato.
So it's not like washy, but kind of. Does that make any sense? I don't use words.
How can we show that? With vibrato or the stroke?
Well, stroke's not unified.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. What's this? Was there an advantage to doing the printed going here?
Is that what's in the score?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
I wonder if we
All up.
try doing down, up, and then the rest of the bar up. Like jump, bump, 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 bump. I don't know.
Sure.
So, question. How are they doing in terms of verbal interaction? Are there too many ideas before they play again, or is it the right number of items before they play again?
I think given that today there doesn't seem to be a time crunch and there's sort of specific things little chunks that we're addressing, I mean, I would ask you guys, Jennifer and Nick, do you feel like there's too many ideas being thrown out there at you?
No, personally, I don't mind. I just want to make sure everything gets addressed. I don't want ideas to kind of float away. So I think now if we could try one suggestion before we have other ideas.
It seems like it's a healthy amount of dialogue to me. I think it's different when there's the whole orchestra and everyone's piling on and there's only 5 minutes left to go and we haven't played the last movement yet or something. But for right now, it seems like a good mix of comments and getting to play.
So the first one's down and starting on the second 16th, they're up though?
Right.
For the whole measure?
Yeah, I just think it would be a good contrast because then we have the short and then the next measure is slow.
With doing the ups, do you want to like measure the same sort of bow?
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate what kind of stroke you measure on the up bow?
Something like.
It's a lot of inner tension and
Yeah,
bite.
and then the next one. And the contrast.
Can you really try his sound at that much teeth in the up bow? Right now it's not together and it's not all that pointed.
Is it soft enough?
Yeah, could we try it again, but now try it piano?
It could be softer, but it also it's a little easy falling down the hill. If there could be more tension, also don't let it run. There's somehow like there's this thing inside, like it's a little scarier and a little, I don't know if angry's not the word, but there's something interesting coming out. It is a little overt right now, but. Do you guys like it? It's now making a statement. It's doing something.
I think it worked better. I think it's not, can we try it again? It's still not locking in with everyone's stroke. It's still a little different.
I was thinking, can we try a different one once? Like having a strong down bow and having more on the string just go up.
With a lot of vibrato.
Yeah.
With a like a.
So like,
Yeah.
Sure.
Can you try that same thing but with more appassionato tension in that stroke? Right now it's easy for it to just become pretty, but if it could be that length and vibrato but a little bit more tension in that color. Do you guys have a...
I like the direction that the up bow is going in, but it feels very, to me, for some reason, disconnected from what comes after. It's like, I don't know. It's like something's not coming together.
Should we try crescendo?
Like, at what point does what go where? With that one.
Well, all the piano stuff should hang together in some way.
Well, what if we change it, dum, bum, 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 and as we're coming down the scale, kind of feel like the character's changing into more legato instead of having, see if that works more? Instead of making two distinct characters, try to make it one thing that morphs throughout. Does that make sense? Maybe doing Eugene, same with the carrying.
So you're suggesting the stroke is longer? Gets longer as we go down?
Yeah, a little longer as we get down, and then.
Can you try starting with it a little bit bitey like Jonathan was doing and then lengthening? Because also it'll help bring it out of the chords, the forte chords. It'd be interesting to see it morph from kind of bitey to longer. The danger is one could say that's sort of the half of one and half of the other ideas. But
like with the, I would be in favor of choosing one or the other rather than doing the morph thing, simply because he writes the articulation like it should be separate, you know, like it should be a different sort of feeling when the articulation changes in the part. But
yeah, I agree with that. I think the first thing we were trying with keeping him in the same Jonathan's idea, I felt like that was more convincing when we were trying them, but I mean, we didn't really try either of them that many times. But I felt like that showed, it kind of kept it in the same character as the fortissimo a little bit more, which I think was nice.
And from this perspective, I just felt the initial way you tried it just kept it a little more interesting. Like, oh my god, I was like, oh, what's going to be next?
Well, I think you guys could sleep on it. This has a long gestation period, and just already having had this, there's a lot more character coming through than before. So keep those ideas in mind, and maybe we can talk about it tomorrow, also in November, and see when the piece is more familiar. Would you like to do a little third movement, or I wanted to leave some time in about 15 minutes to do some Sibelius also, but third movement, fourth movement, preferences? Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you guys have any?
It'd be cool to do the last movement.
Okay. So maybe right now, since you had the core, it would be a good time to tell your sections what you decided about, fingering, or just
About fingering?
this versus just a quick, if it'd be possible to try crossing string. Isn't there a name? What is that? Is that bariolage? What's the name for string crossing for the period? Bariolage is. You want to go all the way to the repeat sign? Sure. Not too fast. Just the seconds locking in, and maybe I could use a little physical movement just with all the sound going on, just to see where the beats are, not pointing them out, but just a little bit of. Just seconds. Great. Can we do the same thing now with the first violins joining in at bar 9? Just for the last little bit of it.
Starting at 9?
Starting at the beginning, and they'll come in at 9. Your first 2 bars, when you guys came in, were not locked in. Well, I think the downbeat sounded together, and you just weren't quite in the same groove. So, can you try maybe bar 5 in the seconds, and then the first come in? Yeah, sorry to confuse, but yeah. Also, can you try, also for the beginning of the movement, when you maybe giving it 1, 2, I think it'd be really helpful for everybody. Ultimately, you'll be giving it together, but 1, yeah. Bar 5. First bar you guys come in, getting to the second downbeat is not, I don't know why, but if you could really have in your mind the, also I wonder if, they have a short stroke, but in your melody, if all the bar 3 and 4, if you shouldn't have a little brushier, more of a line, and then the same thing when you guys are all on forte, I guess that has staccato, but somehow there's not enough. Bar 16 sounds like an etude, like a spiccato etude right now. If there's any way of, first of all, maybe more release on the quarter note, and then just a little brushier to just carry it through a little bit more. And it could be a bigger gesture too. The basses, for some reason, are fortissimo. But anyways, you guys can burst out more energy. Can we do all that and then going on, all the forte stuff? You guys are very polite. If you could just be more line, more enthusiasm, more bow energy. Don't be too polite, because it's classical. From the beginning, was everyone playing everything? Interesting thing in if you could come out 31, 2, 3, 4, and then you have this dialogue, da 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 da. If you could be aware that you have it, and then be much more playful and poking those out, and then all that passage after that sounds very like you're not committed to it. It could be a lot more brilliant without being any faster, just more sforzandos, more volume, more playing with the. And then there's such a contrast to where you just stopped at 50. But that beginning was great with the contour that you put in bars 3 and 4. That was much, much nicer. Can you maybe go from 24? And also I wonder, actually, this is a question for the whole movement, but the figure da 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 da, there's a staccato on the, or also when you repeat it, ba ba da da ba 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 da da ba. Sometimes you're playing the first 8th note long, sometimes you're not. I wonder if there should be a certain consistency, because the trumpets, they're always playing it fanfare style. So maybe never da 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 da. I wonder if you could always have a little bit of separation. Question though, who has the melody at 54? Can you guys play that once? And it could be a little bit brighter to cut through. And then you guys in the upper register could play a little bit lighter like you're ornamenting them. Can you play it once? You're tumbling a little bit on the dotted eighths. Rushing, a little more poise, and it could be a little more brilliant, not so much louder, but just really poking out the short notes and everything. Can you da ba da da da? You're almost not dotting it in 58 and 60. Can you go right on 58? Better. So now together, a little bit more together.
If we play at the third position, then the 30 seconds will be on the stage straight. It might come up better. I don't know.
The first one?
No, at 58.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you do the same thing with the first from 54? And just I wanted to just go to the cadence and to the double bar and finish, but I still hear in 66 da 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 da, and it's also not, the placement of the 16th notes is all not in agreement. Maybe really think of the trumpets. Don't try to play it musically. It should be really accurate because everyone's playing that same rhythm there. Think like trumpets. You're not the same.
Can we try it up, down, now? I mean,
sorry.
Can we try it up?
For where?
Just in general. I mean, with some of them.
Especially in 58, I think that would be just.
We could do down, up. So up on the downbeat because then they'll keep it short.
Yeah.
And then we won't rush the eighth note afterwards quite the same way.
Just in some configuration, I don't know how.
Sure, we can try.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the best, but.
We should just think about it being much faster. Like.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But let's give it a try.
Okay.
So starting up this.
Right. I mean, that even kind of works later on, like at 66.
Can you start right at 66?
So try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I think it's coming together. You guys are listening and thinking about things in a different way. I think I'm going to have the Sibelius people join us and do a little bit of that so they don't spend the whole time just sitting there.
Should we change the bowing back?
I think that, yeah, also I think in forte that's not a super great idea to do the up. That's a little leggero. I think in the piano it works, but the forte, da, 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 I think that to, yeah, I agree with you. Jonathan, I asked this earlier too, but do you have spots that you can think of that would make sense to, I mean, because it's, you know, it's so there. Yeah, the whole thing is, I mean, it's, in terms of ensemble things, it relies so much on other great job stuff, so I don't know if you, and I haven't played this in such a long time, I don't know if you, I mean, even, we could start with the first page, but there's, so it's not, this isn't quite a sectional, but if there's issues of you know, people really tuning in places with that, that's all the new, I just noticed that. I mean, because you guys have 23 minutes or so till I'm supposed to let you clear out of here. Okay. Yeah, no, I don't have any program here. It was sort of just to have them. Yes, I didn't bring this. I have one in my room, but okay. So, I mean, I'll let you sort of maybe dictate the spots more, and
So Mark,
and they,
Oh, sweet. So, I kind of just want to do this somewhat under tempo, just because fitting this together is not easy. So, give it a shot. We'll do it in two. So 1, 2. I mean, people can jump in here with the stroke. At this tempo, we're doing a little bit of an offish stroke. In tempo, I think, when we're going like that, I think we're going to have to say more on. So maybe even at this tempo, we can just try to say on the string more. Try again. Can we pick it?
going through to the end and some are relaxing the ends, and that often changes how somebody else comes in. I mean, what?
It would be end of the line.
Oh, like when, even, just like in the second line there, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean.
Oh, they're ending.
Right, I mean, or some of us are, I mean, like, I feel like I'm not sure if they're ending or going on, or, I mean, it just, it's kind of like overlapping phrase, or when we're picking up from the second violins. But even just like the opening two bars, like, some of us are finishing and some are plowing on, so that's even changing our timing.
Right, so I think,
that.
yeah, I think it's saying is, if we have a line that ends in the middle of the phrase, don't play it like an ending, play it like you have no notes.
I mean, even in the very beginning, doesn't it keep going? I mean, with everything, there's always just running eighth notes the entire way through, almost.
Yeah.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
Can you try it a little slower a few more times?
Sure.
At A.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Sure.
So,
Sorry.
but even if we're going slower, we should try and keep the feeling of big motion, you know, and not go at it beat by beat, because it's not going to help us in the long run.
Okay.
1 and 1.
This is 44, the first, can we really maybe try to start more on the piano, and then I'm not hearing a whole lot of innuendo.
We have the same thing.
Yeah. And in addition to that, when we have the second one, I wonder if we can stay, the first, let's stay a bit more instead of full recover. Take care of itself. Is this how you would go about rehearsing something like this?
Yeah, no, I was actually just thinking that if I could actually take a couple of the passages even that you guys worked on, some of the more big, expansive passages that are more musical gestures.
Yeah.
I feel like the note stuff you guys can do later on without me. It's not of much
Sure,
interest to me. Do you want to finish out this section that you're doing? If it would be okay to, this is first rehashing material from yesterday, but in the first movement, that long passage from, I don't have bar numbers, but going into H, when I was asking for more, I guess it would be before, G. I mean, I guess we could start before G, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, actually, I'd be curious just to even hear from G, that one thing, just to get strokes together. I felt like going from the ticka 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 to the brushier stroke to then really digging in and doing a bigger bow eighth note thing, that wasn't fully uniform. Actually, maybe for that reason it would be useful to go back to, this is a little dangerous, but the mezzo forte ticka 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 ticka. What is that?
Yeah,
after F, the fifth bar? Or you could go from F. I don't want to spend too much time on that nightmare, but.
And just to clarify, Jonathan, it's 148 where you're changing your bow to the more on stroke, right? When we're starting over the chromatic. Are you still trying to stay a little more off at that point?
This should, yeah.
I mean,
it should more or less be kind of on-ish with
even
just
that too?
kind of the stick jumping without the bow barely in the string. Yeah.
But then after, I mean, are you trying to think that all the way through? Or, I mean, it seemed in 148 when the line starts changing, is that where you're then being more on? Or are you still trying to keep the
I'm kind of,
I mean, because I feel like that's where a lot of discrepancy is. Right.
yeah, I think I'm just going to be more on there, just a little bit. So, let me try that. So, one more song.
the strokes are now getting more differentiated, but the dynamics aren't really happening, except for they got loud at the end. But all the little hairpins before that starting, even right when you started that, I didn't hear a crescendo, I didn't hear the mezzo forte drop that Jim asked for, the pianissimo didn't happen, all of that. And also it's not quite together, so I don't know if for now it's worth doing, showing a little bit of the half bars or the bar lines. It's a little washy.
Same place?
Our side 5, correct?
144. Yeah,
144.
It's the fifth,
It's better. The thing that it sounds to me like there's almost at the beginning of these hairpins little that you're almost just accenting the beginnings of them, as opposed to that they're broader sort of emphases and then also I hear hairpin down, right? And then more urgent. I don't know if you want to do but here there's a decrescendo though. So I don't know if you want to do down or something. I don't know. Because when I hear that bump, it's more emphasis. And then the final one, it's not just louder, but it's really deeper, right? Somehow, even if it's a little bit not quite accurate, if there could be more of a feeling of you're really digging in to get something fatter sounding. It just sounds like you're a little more hit on each one as opposed to a thing. Could you start at just 4 before G, maybe? The step before that sounded better.
Yeah. 4 before G.
That seemed like it had more unified intent. I don't know. The only thing is the third bar of G. I still feel like that sounds the same as G. There could be just a little bit more. The bowing you can work out later. But then there's I think right after that there's an extended passage that starts once the da ga da ga da ga da da da. I went before I 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Is that?
Yeah, it's 177.
And just my one comment that I noticed from yesterday is when you get to the louder passages, that da ga da ga da ga da da da, you still are playing leggero seeming. That maybe the eighth notes need to have a little more muscle in them, and the da ba ba more bow weight or something. That they, as soon as you see that figure, it seems to go back into the scherzando mode. Whereas I think it does become more muscular as it goes on, particularly the bar before I, and then the third bar of I. Just a lot more muscle.
177.
Sorry, that was a lot better, but I see decreasing amounts of energy going back. Not to point fingers, but if it could be more like a from the back, and you guys drive the front a little bit more.
What dynamic did we just start?
77. Just pick out.
Yeah, we did. I just wanted to get the same or same, I guess.
it. Somehow there's just more locking in on the second bar of L. It was the da-da-da-da started together, had the same articulation. If you can achieve that at the poco largamente. Also, generally I see the same amount of energy. I don't see a lot of looking up. There's a lot of very first entrances, like in the halves of bars, that you're not quite with Jonathan. Jonathan, I frankly feel like even with Jim conducting, you could show a little bit more. Because I think everything's so swirly that there's a tendency for them to, that you're anticipating a little bit, that maybe you just really come in square, because all those 3s against 4s, it would be helpful. He's giving sort of bigger gestures to the brass and stuff if you could be really locked in. And then on the low stuff with the crescendos, da-da, if you guys could really somehow feel where he's going to start crescendoing and getting, this is like L, the 3rd to 4th bar. I'm hearing a real vibrato bow crescendo from the first stand, but it's not quite all happening. It'd be amazing if you guys were all trying to key into that together too. So, can we go, if we can go back to I. Now that da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-da is all great, but those chords, some of them are really great and some of them are a little lacking. I'd almost think of a little, the da, all of them have more energy. They're sort of like these offbeat shrieks or cries or things. They should be more anguished. Sometimes you let go a little easily. They're not unified. How long they are, if they're tapering, are they flat, are they crescendoing? Personally, I think they could really be. So maybe if you don't mind going from I, covering.
So holding a little longer. I don't know if holding a little longer, but just really sustain them all the way.
Oh, and one last thing. When you come in right after I, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, da 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 da. The bowing I don't want to get into, but it sounds little da 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 da. If you could have the feeling of it, ba da 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 ba. It's really gluey. Much better. Jonathan, you do have a tendency to anticipate, well no, actually when you give the cues, sometimes your sound speaks. Yeah. Just that very last thing, all the other stuff that had real appassionato was really nice and rich. The last 8 bars, your rhythms are not quite right and you're a little thin in the, they're not fulled out enough somehow, more appassionato through all those 4s. And then, at the end, it's a sextuplet, right? It sounds a little bit, some of your, so to be accurate there. Maybe if you guys could just, and then I noticed yesterday at M, that downbeat, with the brass arrival, they're coming and there's a little expansion, so I think you need to look up and, no one will hear if it's not quite together, but make sure you don't hit the downbeat of M early, because I think it needs to just be spread the last 4 notes a little bit more than you guys were doing. So maybe key in to the front where you see that last down bow coming. Do you want to go from the second bar of M just to that next? That was much better. I mean, I think now that you know that was all fine. And then there's just one last spot. Jim, where was it in the last movement that you suggested?
I think the second time that fourth foot at the end of the movement, you go to like high D, la, da, da.
If you can tell me what letter that's in.
Letter M?
Oh, is that?
Did you say N?
M?
Is that from A? No, that's not.
M? Well, we've got
M?
the slower for M, so.
Yeah, that sounds right.
M? N, thank you. If you guys can just start there. Those hairpins, maybe it means starting with a little less of all your strength. So you have space, the third and fourth of N up. And then for me coming down, you're not quite unified in your... It's a little leggero. Some people are doing more weight. It's not quite... And also then, I don't know if you want to agree on 2 before the key change and the key, is it getting bigger again, or is it all coming down until the, I don't know what, where is it getting thicker again? Because it seemed like it wasn't clear when it's turning back into, do that again. To leave room to grow in the third and fourth bar, and fifth and sixth bar. My one last thing would be that in the un poco con modo, if there could be more pain across those intervals, I don't hear the tension, da da ba da, but you know, it's not easy, I realize, but it seems a little ho hum how you're coming down those intervals. And also, still for me, the da da ba 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 da, those are much more weighted and weightier than I'm hearing from. Sure. Is there any way that there could be more crescendo color change in the 5th to 6th bar of N also? I think you could come down a little bit more on that hairpin down into the 5th bar somehow. It's just the sound sounds flat up there.
Okay.
much more satisfying. That was great. And I think that that's all we have time for, since we have to clear out the hall. So thank you guys for.